All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving deep into the world of electric vehicles.
EVs?
EVs, exactly. And, you sent in a really interesting collection of articles and notes on this.
Yeah.
And getting ready for this, let me tell you, even we learned some surprising stuff.
It's true. EVs seem so modern, such a hot topic right now.
Right.
But the history goes way further back than I think a lot of people realize.
Oh, absolutely. Like way back, almost to the horse and buggy, which is pretty wild to think about.
Yeah.
You sent over that Wikipedia article on the history of EVs, and get this. The first electric motor powerful enough to move a vehicle was built in 1827.
Wow.
1827.
That's incredible.
That's almost 200 years ago.
Yeah, it's wild. And it wasn't just, some kind of one-off experiment either.
Yeah.
By the late 1800s, early 1900s, electric vehicles were gaining some real traction.
Really?
Yeah, in 1900, a quarter of all the cars on the road in the U.S.
Wow.
electric.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, even President Woodrow Wilson, he was driven around in a Milburn electric, which apparently could go about 60 to 70 miles on a single charge.
Not bad. Not bad for the early 1900s.
Not bad at all.
So what happened?
Right.
That's amazing. So what happened? Why did they kind of disappear for a while, only to come back, more recently?
Well, like a lot of things in history, it really comes down to a bunch of different factors, all kind of coming together at once.
Right.
Economics, available technology. In those early days, EVs, they faced challenges like limited range, obviously, and charging infrastructure, basically non-existent.
Right.
And then you had the mass production of gasoline-powered cars, like the Ford Model T,
Right.
made them much more affordable, and gasoline, well, that was readily available.
Yeah.
So all these factors combined really shifted the whole automotive landscape away from electric towards gasoline, which, is interesting to think about because now it's those same factors, cost, infrastructure, and of course all the technological advancements we've seen, they're now driving that resurgence of EVs.
It really highlights how, cyclical innovation is, doesn't it?
Absolutely. What's old is new again.
Right.
But now, with this added urgency, right, environmental concerns, and then the advancements in things like battery technology.
Yeah, let's talk about batteries for a second, because you mentioned earlier how that was a limiting factor for those early EVs.
For sure.
And now it's lithium-ion batteries. It seems like that's what everybody's using.
Yeah, pretty much.
But I remember you mentioning something about nickel metal hydride batteries.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Could you walk us through the differences and why lithium-ion kind of won out in the end?
Sure. So nickel metal hydride batteries, or NEMH as they're often called,
Okay.
they were actually used in some of those early EVs.
Interesting.
Notably some General Motors models, but they had some downsides.
Oh.
They were prone to self-discharging, particularly in hot weather, and their lifespan wasn't as long as what we get with lithium-ion batteries today.
Ah, I see.
And here's a little twist. Chevron, the oil giant, they actually held a really key patent for NEMH batteries for a while,
Oh, wow.
which some people argue might have actually hindered their development for EVs. Kind of
Ah.
interesting, right?
It really is. So while NEMH had its moment, it seems like lithium-ion, that's what really changed the game.
Definitely. And a lot of that progress in lithium-ion actually came from the consumer electronics boom.
Oh, interesting.
Think about it. Laptops, smartphones,
Mm-hmm.
all needing powerful, small, lightweight batteries.
Right.
Lithium-ion, it offered this better balance of energy density, how much energy they can store,
Okay.
along with that longer lifespan, and crucially, decreasing production costs.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it made them the ideal choice for EVs as well.
So we've seen how battery tech has really driven this whole EV revolution, but one of the big things we always hear about with electric vehicles is, the environmental benefits.
Of course, yeah.
But looking through the research that you sent, it seems like the environmental impact of EVs is a little more complicated than just zero emissions, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's true that EVs themselves, they don't have those tailpipe emissions.
Right.
But we got to think about the whole picture, right? The entire life cycle of the vehicle, and especially the battery.
Okay.
And that includes stuff like, what's the environmental impact of mining the raw materials for those batteries?
Right.
And then where's the electricity coming from that's being used to charge them?
You had some pretty, I gotta say, eye-opening stats about the mining of lithium and cobalt,
Yeah.
which obviously those are essential components of lithium-ion batteries.
Absolutely. It's definitely a concern. For example,
Where?
a huge chunk of the world's cobalt comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Okay.
And mining practices there often haven't been the best, to say the least.
Right.
Environmental degradation, even human rights concerns.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to gloss over that.
Absolutely not. And then there's lithium,
Okay.
often extracted through open pit mining, which, again, can have a big environmental impact, especially on water and ecosystems.
So the greenness of an EV, it really depends on a lot of different factors.
Okay.
Where are those materials being sourced from? How are they being mined?
Dig out.
And even then, that's not the whole story.
No, absolutely not. We also got to think about the electricity, like we were saying.
Right.
If you're charging your EV with power generated from coal, well, the overall benefit kind of shrinks, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Compared to, let's say, charging with solar or wind power.
Right. So it's complicated.
It's definitely complex with a lot of moving parts, no easy answers.
It seems like, I don't know, we need to make sure that this push for cleaner transportation, it goes hand in hand with, making sure we're getting those materials responsibly and transitioning to more renewable energy sources.
100%. And the good news is, there's a lot of work being done on those fronts.
Okay.
More emphasis now on ethical sourcing for battery materials and battery recycling technology. That's getting better all the time.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, so progress is being made.
Okay.
It's not just about the batteries themselves, though, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
In your notes, you mentioned charging infrastructure, too.
Oh, yeah. That article you shared about that wireless charging roadway in Detroit.
Oh, yeah, that's a cool...
That just blew my mind.
Well, pretty wild, right? Michigan's actually piloting the first wireless charging roadway in the U.S.
Really?
Yeah, the idea is you could charge your EV just by driving over a specially equipped road.
So no more, range anxiety.
Just a hope.
No more, having to find a charging station. You just...
Yeah, just drive.
Drive. That sounds amazing. And a little, I don't know.
A little far-fetched, maybe?
Far-fetched? Yeah. Too good to be true? A little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's still early days for this tech, gotta be honest.
Sure.
But it has potential. I mean, imagine, right?
Yeah.
Charging your car is as easy as just driving down the road.
I mean, that would be incredible.
Right. But of course, there are still challenges. We got to be realistic. Cost, scalability. We're not quite there yet.
Right. But even if that specific tech doesn't, become widespread,
Sure.
It highlights something really crucial, the future of EVs.
Yeah.
It's really tied to having, really robust and innovative charging infrastructure.
That's exactly it. And that infrastructure needs to be woven into our cities and towns, right?
Right.
Which actually, that brings us to another interesting thing you pointed out.
Okay.
The connection between EVs and urban planning.
Right. That study comparing electric trams to buses, that was fascinating.
Yeah, interesting one, right?
It wasn't directly about EVs, but I thought it was really relevant.
I see why you connected it, yeah.
Because it showed how, even that shift to electric transportation can have these ripple effects on how we think about designing our cities.
Totally. And what I thought was really interesting about that study was how it showed that electric trams, they could not only reduce emissions, obviously,
right,
but potentially improve traffic flow, even revitalize certain areas, make them more pedestrian friendly.
Interesting.
So all of a sudden, it's not just about the vehicle itself, it's about the whole ecosystem.
Right.
And those are exactly the kinds of things that city planners, they're thinking about now, right? With more EVs on the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where do we put charging stations? How do we design streets that work for all these different types of electric vehicles?
Makes sense.
It's a whole new set of questions.
It's like we have to rethink how our cities work on a basic level.
Totally, yeah. And it's not just about, personal cars either.
Right.
You had some stuff in your research about electric trucks.
Oh, yeah.
Anything stand out to you there?
Well, I was really struck by how quickly electric trucks are kind of catching on, especially for things like deliveries, around a city or those shorter trucking routes.
Right.
Which makes sense when you think about it. I mean, less noise pollution, less air pollution in cities.
Huge benefit, absolutely.
That's a win for everybody.
Yeah, and for businesses too, right? Lower operating costs, that's a big deal.
Oh, right, because they don't need as much maintenance, right?
Exactly, less maintenance. And then the electric powertrains are just more efficient.
Okay.
Especially with regenerative braking, where the battery actually recaptures energy when you brake.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So we've got electric cars, electric buses, electric trucks.
Really becoming widespread.
It feels like everything's going electric.
Yeah.
What about, those bigger things like long-haul trucking or even airplanes?
Yeah, those are tougher nuts to crack, for sure.
Right.
For long-haul trucking, the big issue right now is weight. Batteries are heavy.
Right.
And that cuts into how much cargo they can haul.
Okay.
And, of course, charging on those long routes, still a challenge.
Yeah, I guess you can't exactly just pull over and find a charging station that easily when you're out on the open road.
Not yet, anyway. But there's definitely progress being made, longer ranges, faster charging. Those are all things being worked on.
That's good to hear.
It really feels like in this field, things are just moving so
It
fast.
does, yeah. Like every day there's something new.
Exactly. And it's not just the vehicles. The infrastructure is changing, too.
Right.
Like, we're starting to see higher voltage outlets designed for faster charging
Oh, wow.
being put into new homes. I even saw some governments are thinking about making those mandatory in new construction.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, things are changing fast.
So from those early electric carriages to like all this cutting edge stuff we're talking about,
It's quite a journey.
it really is. EVs have come a long way.
They have. And I think in a lot of ways, we're really just getting started.
That's exciting.
It is. And as you keep learning about this stuff, one last thought I'll leave you with.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about how EVs can reduce emissions.
Right. Cleaner transportation, all that.
But what if they could actually be part of creating a more reliable, more decentralized power grid?
Oh, interesting. How would that even work?
Well, imagine a future where your EV, it doesn't just take power from the grid, it can also send it back.
Oh, wow. Like put energy back into the grid.
Exactly. It's called vehicle-to-grid technology, or V2G.
Okay. Never heard of that.
Basically, if we could use the batteries from millions of EVs, it could potentially really change things.
Like how?
Well, for one, it could help us rely less on those big polluting power plants.
Okay.
And it could also help smooth out the ups and downs we get with renewable energy sources, like solar and wind.
Right. Because those aren't always consistent.
Exactly. So your car basically becomes part of this huge spread out energy storage system.
That's amazing. I mean, who would have thought 100 years ago that our cars would be doing that?
Right. It's pretty incredible to think about.
It really is. It makes you look at electric vehicles in a whole new light, not just about getting from point A to point B anymore.
Definitely not.
It's about the whole future of energy.
That's what's so exciting about it. So much potential, so much still to explore. It's going to be fascinating to see where things go from here.
I'm with you on that one. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive.
It flew by.
It really did. But this conversation has given me a lot to think about, and I hope it did the same for you, our listeners.
You too. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Anytime. And to all of you listening, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.